I died an atheist at age 12 and woke up screaming the name of Jesus. What I saw in those 6 minutes of my death made my entire family abandon atheism. My name is Elena Gonzalez, and I grew up in Puerto Angel, a small fishing village on the coast of Oaxaca, where the smell of salt and fresh fish mingles with the constant sound of waves crashing against the rocks. Our house was modest, painted blue, a color scorned by the relentless sun of the Mexican Pacific, located just 3 blocks from the main boardwalk. From my window, I could see the fishermen's boats leaving before dawn, their motors breaking the early morning silence. But there was something that made my family completely different from everyone else in that deeply Catholic town. We didn't believe in God. My father, Rodrigo Gonzalez, was a fisherman like most of the men in Puerto Angel. His hands were calloused from years of hauling nets, and his face was tanned from countless days in the sun. But unlike his colleagues, who crossed themselves before going out to sea and carried images of the Virgin of Guadalupe on their boats, my father openly mocked those customs. The sea responds to the currents and the weather, not to prayers, he would say while drinking his black coffee in the mornings before going to work on his boat. La razón, the reason. Yes, that's how literal my father was with his philosophy of life. He believed only in what he could touch, measure, and explain logically. God, for him, was just an invention to control the ignorant masses. My mother, Patricia Gonzalez, was a high school teacher at Technical School No. 52 in Pochutla, the largest town half an hour from Puerto Angel. She taught biology and chemistry, and her scientific rationalism was even more rigid than my father's. I remember perfectly how she explained to my brother Miguel and me that the universe was the result of the Big Bang, that humans evolved from primates, and that human consciousness was just a collection of electrical impulses in the brain. When we die, Elena, we simply cease to exist, like when you turn off a computer. There's no heaven, no hell, nothing after, she would tell me while preparing dinner in our small kitchen, where calendars with pictures of paradise beaches hung, never of saints or virgins. Miguel, my younger brother, was 9 years old and my accomplice in everything. He accepted without question everything our parents taught us. I, on the other hand, although I had internalized the family's atheism, sometimes felt a strange curiosity when we passed by the town's church and I heard the singing, but I never dared to express it aloud. In our house, religion was a taboo subject, treated with the same contempt as superstition or ignorance. I was in 6th grade at the Benito Juarez Elementary School in Puerto Angel, and being the only openly atheist girl in a classroom of 30 Catholic students was a daily battle. My classmates looked at me strangely when Ms. Conchita asked us to say a prayer before exams, and I would sit silently with my arms crossed. "Why don't you pray, Elena?" they would ask. "Because I don't believe in fairy tales," I would reply with the same arrogance I had learned from my parents. This earned me the rejection of several classmates, but also the admiration of others who saw me as the intelligent girl who wasn't easily fooled. My best friend was Lupita Hernandez, a dark-haired girl with big eyes and a permanent smile who lived 2 houses down from mine. Her family was the complete opposite of mine. Devout Catholics who never missed Sunday Mass at the parish of Our Lady of the Assumption. Lupita and I had constant debates about God, Elena, music. But how can you not believe? Look at the sea, the stars, who do you think made all that? She would say to me, sitting on the rocks of the boardwalk while we ate tamarind shaved ice we bought from Don Chenti's cart. Nature made itself, Lupita, it's evolution, it's science. I would reply confidently. She would just shake her head and say, "One day you'll see, Elena, God exists even if you don't want to believe it." The religious festivities in Puerto Angel were a real spectacle. Day of the Dead, Holy Week, the patron saint festivities in honor of the Virgin of the Assumption in August. The whole town was transformed with altars, processions, marigolds, and the smell of alcohol burning in every corner. My family only participated in the cultural aspects, never the religious ones. We ate pan de muerto, visited relatives, but we never set up altars with prayers or attended Mass. They're Mexican traditions, not necessarily Christian. My mother would justify, for us, Day of the Dead was just folklore, not a real belief that the spirits returned. The only real point of conflict in our family was my paternal grandmother, Consuelo Gonzalez. My father's mother was a woman of almost 70 with white hair tied back in a bun and hands always busy praying the rosary. She lived in the La Boquilla neighborhood on the other side of town, and my father barely spoke to her. Your grandmother is deluded, Elena. She wasted her life kneeling before plaster statues, my father would say bitterly every time she tried to approach us. Grandma Consuelo visited us once a month, always bringing Oaxacan tamales with black mole and a small Bible she tried to give us. Rodrigo, please, let the children know Jesus, she begged my father. That's enough, Mom, I don't want you filling their heads with superstitions, he would reply curtly. I watched her leave with tears in her eyes, but I didn't understand why it hurt her so much that we didn't believe in her God. At school, on Fridays we had a weekly class called Civics and Ethics, where the principal, Mrs. Menz, a robust woman with thick glasses and an authoritarian voice, would talk to us about values. Although it was a public school, she supposedly ended by mentioning God. Children should thank God for everything they have, she would say. I would raise my hand defiantly. Teacher, I don't have to thank someone who doesn't exist. I thank my parents who work every day. But on March 6, 2019, everything I believed in, everything my family had taught me, my entire rational and atheistic world was going to collapse in a matter of 6 minutes. 6 minutes in which my heart would stop beating, my lungs would stop breathing, and my soul would discover a truth that would change my life and that of my entire family forever, always. March 6, 2019, dawned like any other day in Puerto Angel. The sun rose radiantly over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky with orange and pink hues that only the Oaxacan coast can offer. I woke up excited because that day we had the most anticipated school trip of the year. We were going to visit Cipolite Beach, known as the Beach of the Dead because of its dangerous currents, but also famous for being one of the most beautiful in all of Mexico. I didn't know it then, but every second of that trip, every laugh, every image through the window would be one of the last memories of my life before I die. We're already sunbathing, something that always seemed strange to me because we locals avoided the midday sun. Teacher Menz gathered us all under a large palapa she had reserved for us. Listen carefully, children. The rules are clear. Don't stray from the area that Teacher Ramirez and I will mark. Don't swim if you see the red flags. And please, please, respect the ocean. Cipolite is beautiful, but dangerous, she warned us in her serious voice. Several of my classmates weren't even listening anymore. Eager to jump into the water, I put on my aquamarine swimsuit that Mum had bought me the previous month at the Pochutla market. I slathered on sunscreen until I was completely white. Much to Lupita's dismay, who laughed at me, and ran toward the sea with my best friend holding hands. The water was perfect, not too cold, not too hot. The first waves hit our legs and made us laugh out loud. Javier and Andres started a water fight that soon involved half the class. Carolina stayed on the shore taking pictures with her cell phone inside a waterproof bag. Mr. Ramirez was with us in the water, keeping a watchful eye, whistling whenever someone went too far out. I felt free, happy, alive. I jumped the waves with Lupita. We snorkeled to see the small fish near the rocks. We floated on our backs, looking at the cloudless blue sky. The hours passed without us noticing. Menz called us at noon to eat the sandwiches we had brought. I devoured my ham and cheese sandwich and drank a mango juice I had bought from a vendor. Some classmates played soccer on the sand, others built sandcastles. The quieter girls collected seashells. Lupita wanted to go back in the water immediately. Come on, Selena. Just a little while longer before the sun gets too strong, she begged me. I agreed without a second thought. It was around 2:40 in the afternoon when we returned to the sea. The sun was at its highest point, and the heat was intense. There were fewer people in the water because most were resting under the palapas. Javier, Andres, Carolina, Lupita, and I decided to go a little further out to where the waves were bigger and more fun. Teacher Ramirez yelled at us not to go so far out, but we, with that typical arrogance of children who think they are invincible, partially ignored his warning, staying in what we considered a safe spot. We were laughing, jumping waves, when suddenly I felt something strange. The water under my feet began to move differently, as if it were pulling me. I thought it was my imagination, but then, in a matter of seconds, an invisible force began to drag me out to sea. It was a rip current. My father had warned me about them my whole life, but I never, ever imagined how terrifying they really were. I tried to swim to shore, but it was as if the ocean had grabbed me with giant hands and was pulling me with superhuman strength. Lupita, Lupita, help! I screamed at the top of my lungs. My best friend turned around, and I saw the terror on her face as she realized what was happening. Elena, teacher Elena, started screaming. JV tried to swim toward me, but the current started pulling him in too, and he had to go back. I was kicking, desperate. I thrashed my arms with all my might, but every second I drifted farther and farther from the beach. I could hear the distant shouts of Mr. Ramirez, men's, and my classmates. I saw Mr. Ramirez running toward the lifeguards. Panic completely gripped me. I swallowed salt water that burned my throat and nose. My arms began to tire. The waves pounded my head relentlessly. I tried to remember what my dad had told me, don't fight the current, but my body acted on instinct, struggling, kicking, drowning. I swallowed more water. My lungs burned. I'm going to die, I thought, and the most terrible thing is that at that moment I remembered all the times I had said that death was just the end, that there was nothing after. Only darkness, and I felt a fear I had never experienced in my 12 years of life. 2 lifeguards, Hector and Mario, jumped into the water with their rescue boards. I saw them coming, but they seemed to move in slow motion. I had no strength left, my arms wouldn't respond. I swallowed more water, my vision began to blur. The last thing I consciously remember was sinking underwater, seeing the sunlight distorted by the waves above me and a feeling of absolute cold invading my body. Then, darkness. The lifeguards pulled me out of the water. 2 minutes later they got me on their board and paddled urgently toward the shore. According to what they told me later, when they got to the beach, I wasn't breathing anymore. My skin was blue, my lips purple, my eyes open, but lifeless. Teacher Menz was screaming hysterically, pleading help. My classmates were crying in terror. Teacher Ramirez began giving me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and chest compressions. Hector, the most experienced lifeguard, took over. 1, 2, 3. He counted while pressing on my chest. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, nothing. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, nothing. Someone had called the Red Cross. The ambulance arrived at exactly 2:57 p.m. The paramedic, a man named Raul Ochoa, checked my pulse. There wasn't one. He checked my dilated pupils, unresponsive. He checked my breathing with a mirror, nothing. Officially, I was dead, but he didn't give up. He pulled out a portable defibrillator. He yelled. The first electric shock pierced my inert body, nothing. Second shock, nothing. He continued with the compressions. 3 minutes lifeless, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Teacher Ramirez wept, clinging to Teacher Menz. Lupita knelt in the sand, her hands clasped in prayer, begging a God she believed in. But I didn't. Please, God, please don't take Elena. 6 full minutes without vital signs, and then my body convulsed. I coughed violently, expelling salt water. My lungs inflated with a painful gasp of air. My heart beat once, twice, 3 times. The paramedic's monitor began to beep. I had returned, but what no one knew yet was that during those 6 minutes of death, I hadn't been in the darkness I so often proclaimed. I had been in a place that would defy everything I had ever believed. What I am about to tell you is the most difficult thing to explain in human words, because our language is limited in describing the things of heaven. But I will try to recall every detail my memory holds of those 6 minutes when my heart stopped beating and my soul left this earthly world. 6 minutes that felt like an eternity and changed absolutely everything I believed about life, death, and the existence of God. The exact moment I swallowed the last mouthful of salt water and my body surrendered beneath the waves of super light, I felt something I will never forget, a separation. It's the only way I can describe it. It was as something detached from my physical body, like when you take off a tight jacket. Suddenly, I no longer felt the water burning my lungs, I no longer felt the suffocating panic, I no longer felt pain, only peace, a peace so profound that no earthly experience can compare. The next thing I remember is that I was floating, but not in the water, but in the air, several meters above the beach. I could see myself. Yes, I could see my own body lying on the beach sand and polite, completely motionless, with bluish skin and purple lips. It was the most disturbing and yet most fascinating image I had ever witnessed. I saw the lifeguard, Hector, doing desperate chest compressions. I saw Mens with her hands on her head, crying. I saw Mr. Ramirez talking on the phone, probably calling my parents. I saw Lupita kneeling in the sand, her hands clasped in prayer, tears streaming down her cheeks, her lips moving in a prayer I couldn't hear, but somehow knew exactly what she was saying. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I could see my classmates huddled around, some crying, others hugging each other, terrified. I saw JV with his hands over his face, blaming himself for not being able to help me. I saw Carolina without her cell phone for the first time all day, simply paralyzed by shock. I saw every detail with impossible clarity. The coconut vendor, who had left his cart to come and see what was happening, the foreign tourists, keeping a respectful distance, a brown stray dog sniffing near our backpacks, the seagulls still flying over the sea as if nothing extraordinary were happening. Then I heard the ambulance siren approaching. I saw the white and red Mexican Red Cross vehicle park on the sand, its tires sinking slightly. I saw a paramedic get out with a briefcase. I heard him say, "She has no pulse, get the defibrillator ready," and at that moment, a part of me thought, I'm dead, I'm really dead, but I didn't feel fear. On the contrary, I felt a strange curiosity and that peace that continued to envelop me like a warm embrace. It was then that the transition began. I don't know how to explain it any better than this. Suddenly, the beach scene began to recede, as if an invisible force were pulling me upward, higher and higher. I saw beaches and beaches becoming smaller. I saw the coast of Oaxaca from a perspective only birds know. I saw the mountains. I saw Puerto Angel in the distance, and then the tunnel appeared. I've heard many people describe tunnels of light in near-death experiences, and I always thought it was a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen in the brain, an explanation my scientist mother had given me when we read about it, but being inside that tunnel was something completely different from any neurological explanation. The light wasn't like sunlight or lamplight, it was a living light, if that makes sense, a light that radiated love, peace, joy, all at once, and as I moved through that tunnel, I felt like I was moving at an incredible speed, but without wind, without friction, just pure movement toward that light that grew brighter and brighter. I wasn't afraid. That's the strangest thing of all. I, Elena Gonzalez, the girl who was afraid of the dark, who slept with a lamp on, who avoided horror movies, didn't feel even a trace of fear in the face of the unknown I was experiencing. On the contrary, I felt like I was going home, even though I had never been to that place before. And then I came out of the tunnel. What I saw when I stepped outside, I was speechless, literally. If someone had told me a week earlier that heaven was real, I would have laughed in their face, but it was there, and it was more real than anything I had ever experienced on earth. It was a place of such overwhelming beauty that my 12-year-old mind couldn't fully process it. The colors weren't like the colors on earth. There were shades that don't exist in our visible spectrum, colors for which we have no names. The green was greener, the gold shone with an intensity that didn't hurt the eyes but filled them with joy. There was music, not music like we hear on the radio or in church, but a harmony that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was as if the air itself was singing, as if every atom was vibrating in perfect symphony, and that music filled me with such profound joy that I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. There was no pain there, no sadness, no worry, no anxiety, no fear, only love, a love so pure, so perfect, so absolute, that everything else seemed insignificant in comparison. The landscape was like an infinite garden. There were flowers of sizes and shapes that defied all botanical logic, majestic trees that seemed to glow from within, meadows of an impossible green that stretched to the horizon. There was crystal clear water, purer than any water I had ever seen, flowing in streams that sparkled like liquid diamonds, and the sky, oh, the sky, was such a deep blue mixed with gold and white, that it felt like you were inside a giant jewel. Then I saw him, Jesus Christ, walking toward me, and I knew immediately who he was, even though I had never believed in him, even though I had never gone to church of my own free will, even though I had spent 12 years of my life denying his existence. But when I saw him, I knew, without a doubt, that it was Jesus. His presence radiated such powerful love that I fell to my knees, not out of obligation, but from a natural impulse of reverence before something so pure, so holy, so infinitely beautiful. His appearance was difficult to describe because it seemed to subtly change, as if it were more than my eyes could fully capture. He had brown hair that fell over his shoulders, a well-groomed beard, and wore a white robe that shone with its own light. But what I remember most are his eyes. They were light brown eyes, but they contained all the love and the universe. When he looked at me, I felt that he knew me completely. Every thought I had had, every action I had taken, every word I had spoken, and yet he loved me with an unconditional and perfect love. He extended his hand toward me, and when I took it, I felt a current of peace flow through my entire being. Then he spoke. His voice was like flowing water, like soft thunder, like the voice of a loving father. Elena, she said my name, and hearing it from her lips, I felt it was the first time I truly heard my name pronounced correctly. Elena, my daughter, welcome. I couldn't speak. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness, but of overwhelming joy, mixed with shame because I had denied his existence my whole life. Lord, I finally managed to say, I didn't believe in you, forgive me, I didn't believe. He smiled, and that smile held more compassion than I had ever seen on a human face. I know, Elena, but even when you didn't believe in me, I always believed in you. I was always with you, even when you couldn't see me. Then, something extraordinary happened. Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly I could see scenes from my life projected before me like on a three-dimensional movie screen, but more real. I saw moments I had forgotten, moments when I had been in danger without knowing it. I saw the day when I was 7 years old and was about to cross the street in Pochutla, chasing a ball when a truck came speeding towards me. I saw how something stopped me at the last second, a feeling that made me stay on the sidewalk. It was me, Jesus said, I stopped you. I saw when I was 9 years old and became seriously ill with dengue hemorrhagic fever. The doctors told my parents that my condition was critical, that I could die. I saw my parents crying in the hospital and I saw something else. I saw light surrounding my hospital bed. I saw angelic presences that my parents couldn't see. I sent my angels, Jesus said, they healed you. I saw when I almost fell from a tall tree on the beach, when I almost choked on a tamarind, when a scorpion was about to sting me in my room, but fell to the floor before reaching me. In every moment of danger, he had been there protecting me, even though I denied his existence. But why? I asked him, crying, why did you protect me if I didn't believe in you? If I mocked you? His answer changed my life forever. Because I love you, Elena. My love doesn't depend on you loving me first. I loved you before you were born. I formed you in your mother's womb. I counted every hair on your head. I have kept every tear you have shed. You are my daughter, and nothing, not even your disbelief, can change that. Then he showed me something else. He showed me the purpose of my life. I saw larger images of myself, sharing my testimony, speaking of him. I saw my family, my father, the atheist fisherman, my mother, the rationalist scientist, my brother, Miguel, all kneeling and accepting him as their savior. I saw the faces of people I didn't know, but who would be impacted by my story. I saw lives changed, souls saved, families restored, all beginning with this moment. It's not your time yet, Jesus said tenderly. You must go back, you must tell them what you have seen, you must tell them that I am real, that heaven is real, that my love is real. Many will not believe, but some will, and for those few, it is worth it. I don't want to leave, I begged, clinging to his hand. I want to stay here with you forever. He stroked my head with infinite tenderness. And one day you will return, I promise, but now your family needs you. Your purpose on earth is not yet complete. Go, my daughter, and do not be afraid. I will be with you every day until the end of the world. And then everything began to fade, the celestial garden, the music, the impossible colors, everything began to drift away. The last thing I saw were his eyes full of love, and the last thing I heard was his voice saying, Elena, always remember, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And then the pain, the most intense physical pain I had ever felt, when my soul was forced back into my body on that beach in Sippolite, where I had been dead for a full 6 minutes. The return to my body was the most violent and painful experience I had ever experienced. It was like being ripped from paradise and thrown back into a prison of flesh and blood. If leaving my body had been like taking off a tight jacket, returning was like being forced into the jacket while engulfed in flames. Every nerve in my body screamed in agony. My lungs inflated with a gasp of air that burned as if I were inhaling ground glass. My heart lurched erratically and began to pound painfully against my chest, and then I coughed. I coughed with a violence that shook my entire body. Salt water, sand, bile, everything was expelled from my lungs in uncontrollable convulsions. I heard screams all around me, but everything sounded distant, muffled, as if I were underwater again. My eyes opened, but the Sippolite sunlight was so bright, so painful compared to the celestial light I had just experienced, that I had to close them immediately. Someone was screaming, "She's alive, oh my God, she's alive!" It was Teacher Menz's voice, broken by sobs. I felt hands on me, turning me onto my side as I continued coughing and vomiting water. "It's okay, child, it's okay, it's over now, you're all right." I heard paramedic Raul Ochoa's voice trying to sound calm, though I could detect the tremor of astonishment in his tone. I tried to open my eyes again, blinking against the blinding light. Blurry faces leaned over me. I recognized Teacher Ramirez, Lupita with her face soaked in tears, and the lifeguards Hector and Mario, breathing heavily from the effort of the rescue. But the first thing that came out of my mouth, before I could even fully process where I was or what had happened, were words I had never spoken in my life with such conviction. "Jesus, I saw Jesus, he is real." The silence that followed my words was absolute. Everyone present froze, staring at me as if I had spoken in an unknown language. Paramedic Raul stopped checking my vital signs for a second, his eyes meeting mine with an expression of utter bewilderment. Teacher Menz covered her mouth with both hands. Lupita, my best friend who knew me better than anyone, who knew perfectly well that I was the most atheist girl in all of Puerto Angel, stared at me wide-eyed, unable to believe what she had just heard. "What did you say, Elena?" asked Teacher Ramirez, leaning closer, thinking that perhaps I had hallucinated due to lack of oxygen. But I, even though my body ached all over, even though I could barely breathe without my chest burning, repeated myself more forcefully, "Jesus is real, I saw him, I was in heaven, I saw the third heaven." Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of physical pain, but rather an overwhelming mixture of joy and frustration. Joy because I had experienced something so beautiful, so real, so transformative, and frustration because human words couldn't do justice to what I had seen. He spoke to me. I kept trying to sit up, but was gently stopped by the paramedic. He showed me my life, told me he loves me, protected me when I almost died before and I didn't even know it. "He's real, God is real, Elena, calm down, sweetie," said Menz, taking my hand tenderly, but also with evident concern on her face. "You just went through a traumatic experience, you are without oxygen, it's normal to have hallucinations." But before she could finish, I interrupted her with a vehemence that surprised even myself. It wasn't a hallucination. It was more real than this moment, now more real than this beach, than you, than anything. Lupita fell to her knees beside me, taking my other hand, her eyes filled with tears, but also with something else, hope, wonder, maybe even validation. Elena, I was praying for you, she whispered. I asked God not to take you and he brought you back. I nodded vigorously, squeezing her hand. Yes, Lupita, yes, you're right. God exists. Everything you believe is true. I saw him with my own eyes. The paramedic Raoul decided it was time to transfer me immediately. We need to get her to the health center. She was dead for a full 6 minutes. She needs urgent medical attention. They lifted me onto a stretcher, and as they moved me toward the ambulance, I kept talking, unable to contain the words that poured out of me like an overflowing river. I saw my body here on the sand. I saw all of you. I saw you, Teacher Ramirez. Talking on the phone, I saw Lupita praying the Lord's Prayer. I saw the coconut vendor who left his cart. I saw everything from above. Teacher Ramirez turned pale. How? How can you know that? You were unconscious, lifeless, but I continued describing details that I had no way of knowing. You told someone on the phone, I think the principal, we need someone to come. It's a serious emergency. The coconut vendor is an older gentleman with a blue Oaxaca warrior's cap, and there was a dog, coffee near our backpacks. The teacher's eyes filled with tears. All of that is true, all of that happened, but you weren't breathing, Elena. They put me in the ambulance. The inside smelled of disinfectant and alcohol. Raoul started connecting me to a vital signs monitor, while his partner, a young paramedic named Monica, whose hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, drove with the sirens blaring down the highway back to Puerto Angel. Every bump in the road made my aching body protest, but I couldn't stop talking. It was as if the words needed to get out, as if keeping them inside was physically impossible. Raoul, right? I said to the paramedic as he jotted things down on a clipboard. He nodded, clearly concerned about my mental state. God loves you, Raoul. I want you to know that. Jesus told me that his love is for everyone, even for those who don't believe, even for those who deny him like I did all my life. My life. The man, who must have been about 40 years old, with premature gray hair at his temples and worry lines around his eyes, stopped writing and looked directly at me. What exactly did you see, child? And then, in that ambulance bouncing along the coastal highway of Oaxaca, I told him everything. I told him about the tunnel of light, the celestial garden, the colors that don't exist on earth, the music that filled everything. I told him about Jesus, about how he was more beautiful than any painting or image had ever shown, about how his eyes contained all the love in the universe. I told him how he showed me moments in my life where he had protected me without my knowing. Raoul listened in silence, his pen still on the paper, silent tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. 3 years ago I lost my son in an accident, he finally said, his voice breaking. He was 8 years old. Since then, I stopped believing in God. I wondered how a loving God could allow a child to die like that. He took my hand tenderly. But if what you say is true, if heaven really exists, then my Carlitos is there, right? I nodded with all the certainty in the world. Yes, Raoul, children go straight to heaven. Your son is with Jesus and is waiting for you. But you have to accept Christ to see him again someday. I don't know what happened in that man's heart at that moment, but I saw something change in his eyes. He nodded slowly, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. Thank you, Elena. I don't know if all this is real or if you're delirious from the trauma, but thank you. I needed to hear that. We arrived at the Rural Health Center in Puerto Angel around 3:30 in the afternoon. It was a small, 2-story building painted white with the logo of the Ministry of Health at the entrance. The doctor on duty, Drive, Jaime Gutierrez, a man in his 50s, wearing thick glasses and a white coat stained with coffee, rushed out when he heard the ambulance. What do we have? He asked with professional urgency. 12-year-old girl, drowning, was without vital signs for a full 6 minutes, CPR successful, now conscious and alert. but with possible brain damage from hypoxia, Raoul reported as they lowered me from the ambulance. They took me to the emergency room, which smelled strongly of chlorine and had only 3 beds separated by faded green curtains. Gutierrez began examining me, checking my reflexes, my pupils, asking me basic questions. "What's your name?" Elena Gonzalez asked. I answered clearly. "What day is it?" "March 6th. "Do you know where you are?" "At the Puerto Angel Health Center." He seemed surprised by my coherent answers. "Do you remember what happened?" And then I started again, telling him about Drowny,